Everybody, how are we doing?
Good.
Yeah, Cole's alive. All right. So yes, AWS. This is what we're talking about tonight. Specifically, how you can use some of the different tools in AWS for slightly nefarious things. Yeah. All right. Who am I? Senior in the new cybersecurity engineering major. I'm one of the people that works for IASG, aka the people that make the CDCs. I am the treasurer for this club, and that is my handle just about everywhere. Mandatory CYA slide. Don't attack things you don't own. Read the Amazon terms of service, because like half of what I'm going to talk about is probably a violation, and using it for offensive things is almost certainly a violation. So at least know what rules you're breaking when you do it. And then if you get caught doing something you shouldn't have, forget me and I'll forget you. Okay, what is AWS? Has anyone here not heard of AWS? Surprising nobody, everyone's heard of it. But Amazon Web Services, or AWS, is just Amazon's cloud compute thing. And when I say thing, I mean many, many, many things, because there are like that many tools. That's a lot. I don't know what most of them do, because there's actually a couple hundred of things. And most of those things have sub-things, and it's crazy. But why do we care about AWS? If we want to do like hacky, evil, fun things, why do we care about some company that's offering cloud computers? Well, the first thing there is that Amazon has 41.5% market share of cloud computing, which is compared to like, I think Google has the next, either Google or IBM has the next at like 5%. So Amazon has a lot of cloud computing. And that is good for us, because it makes it so our traffic blends in, right? It's no longer, I'm getting weird HTTP requests from some IP address. I'm getting weird HTTP requests from an Amazon address. More tools than a Toys R Us. All the cool kids are doing it. Down at the bottom, that little link that's in gray is a list of all of the IP addresses that AWS owns, and it is massive. They have a lot. So you'll, when you spin up like an Ec2 instance that we'll talk about later, or if you do like an ECS or anything, you'll get one of these IPs, and these are pseudo-trusted by a lot of organizations, because who on their right mind is going to blacklist AWS when, again, they have almost half of all cloud computers is coming from them. So yeah, there's all the options again, comedically zoomed out. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about a couple of the tools. I should clarify, this talk is about some of the tools and how you can use them for not necessarily their intended purpose. It is not like how to do a Capital One and escalate from an S3 bucket to the AWS equivalent of a domain admin. It's not how to find exposed S3 buckets. It's how you can use some of these tools for your own purposes. So the first one is an Ec2 instance. If you get into Amazon land, an Ec2 instance is like the first thing that you'll probably set up if you're following the Amazon Hello World thing. What an Ec2 is it's basically a virtual private server, a piece of server in the cloud that you can play around with. There are free options for this, which is fun. It's not, the free one isn't super powerful, but it's got like 2 gigs of RAM and a vCPU, which is enough for a lot of stuff. If you go for some of the bigger sizes, you have to get pre-approved by Amazon if you're running as a personal account. So for example, if you want one of the ones with GPUs, which you totally can get, up to like insane, ridiculous amounts of GPU, you have to go ahead and put in a support ticket, and then they wait 2 days while they get approval, aka prevent you from spinning up a new account solely to crack passwords, and then they give you access to GPUs. I did it, took me like 5 minutes to write a support ticket and then 2 days of waiting. Prices on those are pretty good.
So if you want to create an account to spin up to crack passwords, you just have to think 2 days in advance?
Yes. Yeah, that's about it. The pricing on even the big ones is pretty good. It's like $1 an hour for some of the ones with like 4 NVIDIA Pascal CPU or GPUs and all kinds of stuff. And then when you spin up an Ec2 instance, you'll just magically get a public IP address. And Amazon is so kind as to give you a DNS name that points to that as well. So then you will have a subdomain of AmazonAWS.com that points to your Ec2 instance. Specifically, it'll be arn.compute.amazonaws.com. Yeah, so then you have a public DNS name that most organizations will just more or less trust because it's Amazon, and again, we're not going to block Amazon. Demo, yay, the first of a couple. So, when you sign in to Amazon's console, this is what it looks like. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I never click. The important thing is this one right here, which is the list of all the services, less comedically zoomed this time. And we care about EC2 right now. So we're going to go look at the instances, and lo, there are none, because I don't just leave these running because they do cost some amount of money, not much. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to create one just to see how easy it is. We're going to go ahead and pick this default, what do they call them? AMI, Amazon Machine Image. You can more or less think of this like an ISO when you're installing a server. Here are all of the sizes. I did say there were a lot. They don't put the pricing on here because screw you, that's why. But if we come down, works better if I type. I happen to know that the G2 2XL here with 8 of these and 15 of these, 8 vCPUs and 18 gigs of memory, and then a big old set of GPUs is like $1.25 an hour. So not bad at all, as long as you're not planning on like leaving it run for extended periods of time, because that's like $30 a day, and so 900-ish a month if the math checks out. So maybe don't leave that running forever. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to click this T2 micro, 1 vCPU, 1 gig of mem, slow networking speed, which is still plenty fine. And then it's the one that says free tier eligible. So as long as you stay within those parameters, you get free usage of it. And we'll click through all these screens. Most of these we're just going to ignore, except for shutdown behavior. I'm going to change that to terminate, so that when I kill this instance, it just goes away, and I don't get billed for having a terminate or a stopped instance in my account, because I don't really want to pay for that. You could customize your storage. I'm not going to. Tags. These are just like metadata helpful tags. So if you can go to the tag manager and you can search for like every Amazon asset you have that's tagged with something. So we'll go ahead and add one. This is for the project demo. And now when I create this, it'll have a demo tag on it. Security groups, the default one here is to allow port 22 from anywhere. We're going to go ahead and leave that because it won't stay for long. And then when I click, so it gives me this screen, I can review everything. It warns me that it's open to the world, and that's a bad idea. And when I click launch, this pops up, and it says, it's kind of hard to read, but it says pick a key pair so that you can SSH in. because by default it does not have password authentication, so you have to use a key to SSH in. I've already gone ahead and set one up with Amazon, but it's not hard. It takes like 5 minutes. So we'll just do that, and then, wow, look how fast that was. There's now an EC2 instance out in the cloud that if I copy this and Alt-Tab over to this, whoops. Assuming I'm not faster than it is, this should, oh, it's still pending. I am faster than it is. Oh, now it's running. Let's, type yes, put in the password on my private key. Ta-da! I am now in the cloud. It took me all of, what, a minute and a half, except for the bit where I typoed, to get a server that I more or less own running out in the cloud with a publicly routable IP address and a subdomain of AmazonAWS.com. So, what can I do with this? Well, whatever I want. A really fun, easy thing would just be to put like a VPN endpoint on here. Just install OpenVPN, and then I could VPN from my laptop out to this, and so then it doesn't look like I'm, visiting your website from my apartment. It looks like I'm visiting your website from a server farm in North Virginia. You could spin up a website on this. You could do really anything you do with a normal server. That's literally the point. I hope that I don't have to come up with a huge list of ways you can do evil with this, but yes, I have a server and it was easy. Hi, Jack.
How much evil can you do before, how monitored are these by Amazon?
As far as I'm aware, pretty unmonitored. They do have a mechanism for reporting abuse, but I don't think you're likely to run into that unless you're using this for launching DOS attacks, which don't do that. They will get very angry at you if you do. But in general, if you just spin up a phishing page or something, it's pretty unlikely that you'll get in any kind of trouble. That said, if you do intend to do that, maybe don't tie it to your actual real name. Not that I would encourage violating terms of service by signing up as Fred Hoiberg or something. But, it's an option. They don't actually check your ID yet. Anything else on the EC2 instances before we move on? Cool. Next, S3, the internet equivalent of the kitchen junk drawer. What this is object storage but in the cloud. In and of itself, not terribly evil, but just really, really useful. You can go ahead, what it stands for is right there. Oh, hello, go away. Okay. Yes, so you can set this to be private so that you need access keys to get into it, or you can make it public so anyone can retrieve data from it. There's an option for encrypted at rest so that, if you're worried about Amazon reading your leet payloads, you don't have to worry about that. But the nice thing about this is, if I want to distribute a payload to a victim machine, rather than having to include that in whatever payload I'm sending, I just put out a GET request to this S3 bucket, and then I don't have to worry about the infrastructure of setting up my own FTP server or whatever. There's just a publicly accessible bucket that you can go out and get stuff from. As far as what that looks like in the console, the demo on this one isn't really much of a demo, but no, just S3. So you can see I've just got one bucket here. It's called CF Templates UUID. What a CF template is will come up in a minute, but basically all these are is just files in the cloud, and then each of these has a unique URL so that I could go get it. I think this one is public. Oh, nope, this one's not set to public. Omega lol. Yeah. But it's basically just a file storage place. You can put anything you want in there. Not neat, just useful. Yes?
Is that for the free tier as well? Or
Yeah, there's a free tier for, I forget what the threshold is, but yeah, you can store a decent amount of stuff in there. The thing that you actually have to worry about for the free tier on most of the services that offer it is actually the data transfer. Most of the free tier things have infinite free data in, so you can put as much stuff in there as you want, but they charge you to get it back out. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, you get a good amount of free stuff for most of the free tier, but especially S3, because most of the other services secretly use S3 behind the scenes. Everything you saw in there was automatically generated from me setting up a demo for later. I didn't make any of those files manually.
gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, now on to an actually useful thing. Lambda functions. Lambda is code on demand, which, they like to market it as use this to make you the back end for your Viduma games, or I don't even know. Lambda, however, is actually very, very useful. So there are a bunch of languages you can write your functions in. .NET, Go, Java, Node, Python, Ruby. I will say that anything Amazon related, Node.js and Python are going to be the most supported. Those are the two languages that Amazon has adopted and said, yes, we fully support these. But obviously those other ones are there. There is also a way, if you really want a different language to write your Lambda functions in, there's a way to do that. I haven't personally done it, but I know that it is possible, albeit not necessarily the most fun. You can trigger these in a ton of ways. When I do a demo in a second here, it'll just be, we'll use HTTP to trigger it. However, you can link this up to trigger from all kinds of other things. A while ago, I set up for work a Lambda function that would perform an antivirus scan on any file that got dropped into an S3 bucket. So the trigger then was a new file in the S3 bucket. You can also trigger them off time. You can trigger them off SMS, SNS, excuse me, which is Amazon's way of having different services talk to each other. And then Lambda functions can also modify your other things for you, or deploy things for you, or handle requests for you. The right way to use these, I think, is automation. It's not the way they get used a lot, but that's where I think they're the most useful. So yeah, we'll go to the big orange slide. So to make a Lambda, you typo. Why did it go to Amazon? Okay. So there are currently none of the Lambdas. Let's make one. Author from scratch. This is a demo. I don't want to write it in Node. I want to write it in Python because I'm a hacker. We're going to create the function. And it's going to be slow. This isn't the part that's supposed to be slow. Okay, so it gives me this nice thing here. This is just sample code, and this is a decent editor. If you need a more powerful editor than this, it probably shouldn't be a Lambda function. Lambdas are generally meant to be short, because the advantage of a Lambda is that you're only billed for the amount of time that this function runs. Versus if I were to spin up, here I have just a really janky web server that returns things based on what HTTP verb you used. So if this only needs to run once a day, this is the way to do it. Because now once a day I get billed for 30 seconds of execution time. versus I could spin this up as, you know, a fully fledged Flask app on an Ec2 instance, but then I would be paying for Ec2 throughout the whole day. So this is just a really good way to do code that doesn't run often. So like I said, all it does is you get an event and you get context when your Lambda executes, and it does things based on that. So we'll just save that code. It's not very interesting, I promise. So now we're going to add a trigger. So this is how you make your Lambdas actually do stuff. We're going to go ahead and click API Gateway here, which is how we're going to be able to do HTTP stuff with it. However, you could trigger it off Alexa skills. You could trigger it off CloudFront events. You could trigger it off log events. You could trigger it off commits to Git, objects going into S3, DynamoDB, like all kinds of stuff you can trigger these off of depending on what you want to do. However, for our nefarious purposes, API Gateway is probably the most useful because that'll just give us an HTTP endpoint. And I don't care about security. Leave it open. And just like that, if I go to open link in new tab, ta-da, I get a bunch of JSON back because I just had it dump the context back. Or if I actually copy that URL instead of just clicking it, copy link location, go back to that shell we opened, oh, I can't type. Import requests. And before someone says it, yes, I know I could do curl, but that's slower and more annoying. But now if I post to that, we can see that it returned I'm going postal because I did a post request. And you can see that, oh, when I clicked in, I clicked onto a different thing. Designer, come back. And you can see that that's just in here. So if the method is post, return I'm going postal. Very simple. This example is like incredibly harmless. However, I could trigger this, I could set this up to say, listen for requests from my neat payload on someone's computer that just twice a day calls out to this and says, hey, here's all the interesting data I grabbed, what should I do next? And my Lambda function that only needs to run once or twice a day wakes up, takes that data, puts it in a database or in an S3 bucket or something, and then says, okay, now I want you to run these commands and in 12 hours tell me what happened. Pretty useful. I'm a fan. It's also a nice, I get to write Python, so. Let's see. ECS. If you want to run Docker containers, Amazon has a way for you to do that. So if you write some clever custom C2 framework and you want to run 8 copies of it, one for each of the companies you're pen testing, you can just do that really easily. I guess I should say, has anyone not used Docker before, or at least not know what Docker is? Okay, Docker is some developer's solution to the it works on my machine problem, where instead of giving you code to run, they give you their machine to run. It's technically a container, which is a stripped down version of an operating system. Usually there'll be Linux containers, however you can do Windows containers. And the benefit is then you get a stripped down version of a computer that you virtualize on your computer to eliminate complexities in setting up a service or differences between different services. So if I have Java 11 on my machine, I could get a Docker container with Java 8, and then I could run Java 8 without having to mess around with my system variables. Yes, Moody?
Does Docker also provide some level of security for deploying programs?
Yes, but I wouldn't rely on it too heavily. There have been a number of cases of people getting out of Docker containers And if you do any kind of interesting stuff with like mounting external directories into your Docker container, then getting out of it becomes even easier. So some level of security, yes. Enough that you should just like trust it wholeheartedly, definitely not. There's not going to be a demo on this one because this is a little bit more time consuming to actually do. If we really want, when we're done here, I can go and demo one if we have time. But instead, we're going to go talk about CloudFormation. Who here likes YAML? Yeah, one hand. All right. CloudFormation is Amazon's way for you to pseudo-automate deployment of infrastructure. Basically what that means is you spend a bunch of time writing and debugging a big old file, either in YAML or JSON, and then you deploy it. And you deploy it as many times as you want, and you define a bunch of parameters, and when you deploy it, it just makes a bunch of things for you. So we're going to go through one that's going to deploy an Ec2 instance. So I'll have a second one running. Yes, the upside to this, downside is a ton of JSON and or YAML. The upside is you get to deploy servers from your command line. This could be the template we're going to go through is going to make one security group and one EC2 template. However, some of the ones I've written for work deploy actually like hundreds of things, and they're terrifying and massive. But I can't show you those because that would get me in big trouble, so you guys get to see a small one. So if we go back to Notepad++ and we go to the IASG CloudFormation demo.yaml, we have our parameters. You'll see these in a minute. So image ID, that's the AMI from earlier that tells it what virtual machine to make a copy of. The instance type, aka how big. Here are all the options for how big we could make our EC2 instance. The key name, what SSH key to use, what VPC to put it in, and what subnet it should be on. And then the resource section, this is where the actual entities we're going to create are. An EC2 instance with a bunch of options, and then in a security group with some more options. But the important thing to note here is I'm creating a security group, and then I can reference that security group in, if I could find it, right there, I can reference it in the declaration of that. So instead of having to go and to do this manually, I'd have to go create a security group, click out of the security group section into the EC2 section, make an EC2 instance, tell it to use that security group. Whereas with this, I just say, okay, make all these things and then deploy this whole stack. So this isn't an impressive demo, but you could deploy, a full web server, a database, a load balancer, and a whole bunch of other things with this. It's really up to your creativity and willing to type YAML. So we're going to go visit the CloudFormation tab. We're going to create a stack. We're going to upload a template file. That one, the one that we just looked at. And then we're going to go ahead and look at this in the designer. Strictly unnecessary. However, Amazon has this really cool graphical tool for people who are really afraid of YAML. Doesn't work super well. Like, it'll get the high level out, but then I usually end up having to go into this YAML section down here and fix it, because it'll say, oh, you wanted that to go over as a string, and I go, no, that's a number, why? But there is this nice button right here that says validate template. You can see the template is valid because I checked this one earlier to make sure it would work. But we'll go ahead and deploy that. And you'll see now that this has changed to an S3 URL. Remember that S3 bucket I showed you earlier with auto-generated stuff in it? Those are just different versions of this template that I was testing. So we go ahead and we click next. We give it a name. IASG demo. I have a default for this because I can't remember it off the top of my head. T2 micro is going to be our type. Load that SSH key. Yikes, I don't even know. We'll leave that blank for now. I think that works. And we're going to put it in that VPC because it's literally the only choice. Oh, can't have an underscore. That's fine. It's a dash demo. I will say, CloudFormation has the most useless error messages, but that's just most of Amazon in general. So if you decide to play with this, expect to spend a lot of time not knowing anything, because now what we're going to do is we're going to wait for like a minute for this to go from blue to either green or red. Ah, red. Public subnet. Oh, I can't leave that blank. Whoops. Okay, well, I'll go faster this time. Next. Demo. That key. Sure. I have no idea what subnet that's in, but I'm pretty sure they're all publicly routable. And now we create the stack, and we hope it doesn't turn red immediately. Didn't turn red immediately, so that's probably a good sign. I forget how long this takes. So you can see it's already created that security group for me, which is the list of rules. And then it's creating the Ec2 instance. One thing to note is you can do this user data section when you make an Ec2 instance out of a template like this, which is a clever way to run code or run commands on your machine as soon as it's created. In this case, all I have it doing is echoing hello IASG into temp IASG because I was too lazy to actually write out the commands to install OpenVPN or something. However, that is an excellent use case for this. You could change this template, basically just change this line and add port, whatever OpenVPN uses, to the allowed ports down here. And then you would be able to just, at the click of a button, deploy an Ec2 instance and install OpenVPN on it, and then VPN in, which is fun. Okay, well, create complete. Cool. So now we can go to the resources. We can see that it did make an Ec2 instance. And just to prove that it worked, which I sincerely hope it did, we'll just copy that, go to that, close that. And if I SSH into that, I'm now connected to a second Ec2 instance. Oh, my user data script threw an error. I bet I know what happened. I'm not going to debug that right now. Moral of the story is I guarantee that it wants bin sh as the interpreter, not bin bash. Whoops, should have checked that part. Okay, any questions about that? Again, that one's not super evil, it's just good for automating your nefariousness. Okay, so that actually went faster than anticipated because Amazon played nice and wasn't slow today. Resources to get started. If you do the GitHub education pack, in addition to like a ton of other free stuff, you also get like $100 of AWS credit. So far, I have burned exactly 0 of mine because the free tier is actually pretty good. But if, like, say you wanted to play around with password cracking, again, you could do that for like the $1.25 or whatever it is an hour. The docs, Amazon's docs are pretty good in general. However, I recommend the CloudFormation docs just because they're the most concise and straightforward description of what each of the parameters in the UIs do. DuckDuckGo. Oh yeah. Remember how at the top, or at the start, I said this wasn't just for the hype boys? Well, the hype lords really love Amazon and really love writing blog posts about how much they know about Amazon. So if you just Google AWS thing, I guarantee there's like a million blog posts about it. Like my searches are usually AWS CF EC2 IP, like that. That's what, 12 letters, and then I'll get 100 articles on how to set a specific, or how to attach a specific network, elastic network interface to an EC2 instance in CloudFormation in AWS. Yep, acronym hell. Welcome to AWS. And then at the bottom, Amazon Educate, they have an entire like student-centered course for teaching you how to use all their stuff. Worst case, you go through it in like a day or two, and then you get like a fun little certificate that says you did it, and then you can put that on your resume and be like, hey, look, I did the baby's first Amazon course. It's all right. It's pretty good. There are better ways to learn, but that one's easy and accessible and official. So with that, I zoomed faster than I intended to. Do we have any questions? Do we want to see anything? Do we? No. Okay. I hope you all go out and play with Amazon and have lots and lots of fun. With that, I believe that Mr. Joel Wacker is going to come up here and talk to us about radios.
Where are you using HDMI?
Here you go, Radio Man. I was using HDMI. I will pick up my
Cool. Hello?
things, and you will.
Am I on the internet now?
What?
I'm on the internet.
You're on the internet? Not yet. Camera's not live stream.
Oh.
You will be in something like
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum.
Yes, I have Netflix. Yeah, right. I know, right? But computers, he's.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Nice.
I don't actually want to spend money now.
Hello, everyone. I do things. Radios are cool, and I'm going to talk about how cool they are. So, who am I? Firstly, I guess with IASG, I've been coming here for a while. I'm also the equipment chair of the club, so I think we've got some like Wi-Fi adapters and possibly some SDRs for messing around with some of this stuff that are available for rental. Probably, if I can remember where they're at. Anyways, different topic. I'm just gonna talk about some cool stuff. So I guess to start, the FCC's got a lot of laws around just radio stuff in general. There's a lot of stuff that you can and can't do. And then there's also some state-specific stuff that, yeah, look it up. Don't do illegal things. As far as like receiving, it's pretty much legal except for in the case of if it's something you can benefit from. So like if it's money involved, we'll actually go to that website. They give a couple examples. But something along the lines of interception that are prohibited. Like if you're a taxi company, I guess, and there's a fellow taxi company in your town and you're listening to their radio communication and they get a call in to go pick someone up at some place and you steal their work, technically that's illegal. Some other stuff like stealing satellite television is also apparently illegal. I did not know that. But yeah, if it's monetary based, it's probably illegal. And then Iowa also has a law where if you're recording any kind of like communications, recording specifically is pretty illegal. Listening, on the other hand, is kind of like a weird edge case. A lot of times you're fine listening, just don't record the audio and like keep a file of it somewhere. As far as transmitting, there's a few different like classifications as to what you can do. There's like civilian classes, business, and then there's amateur radio, which is one thing I'm in. So civilian, you've probably heard of like CB radios. Those are fairly low frequency, like, I don't know, 50 megahertz-ish range. Put in a car, trucks, you know, they're still used today, somewhat a kind of a meme at this point. There's business stuff, you know, whatever, business stuff, you know. And there's amateur radio, which, yeah, like if you're going to do like an FM transmitter for like KURE, for example, that requires its own specific license because there's like certain power limits that you're allowed. Usually, if you keep stuff under like 5 watts, for most things you're fine. If it's very low frequency, like what you hear with ham radio, you're allowed even up to 1,500 watts, which is kind of insane. That stuff, if you get if you get it to like bounce off of the atmosphere just right, you can get that to transmit around the world a couple times even. Bounce off the moon, whatever the heck you want. I mean, that's a lot of power. And then like FM radio, like 100.3, I'm pretty sure they're transmitting with somewhere around 10,000 watts, 10 kilowatts. That's enough to probably cook you if you're within a few feet of the antenna. So definitely don't climb those towers. So that's fun. Civilian, yeah. I am no expert by any means on a lot of this stuff, but Wikipedia keeps a PDF from, I think this is 2016, of all the like allocations for everything. And there's a lot. Like, let's see, all the way to the right, we got like 30 megahertz, 300 megahertz, gigahertz. Let's try to find in this room like the section for microphones, like what I've got hooked up to me. Because this microphone transmits somewhere in this area, which currently, I think these microphones are actually illegal, because a few years ago they switched the frequencies they're allowed to transmit on to television there. So currently these are transmitting in this television block, which is kind of entertaining. I think somewhere up in this area, 600-ish megahertz, that's been opened up now for just like microphones and stuff in general, any kind of audio equipment. Anyways, there's a lot of just like random stuff that's been assigned by the FCC and like what you can transmit and can't transmit. At any point, I'll probably have these slides put in Slack at some point. The link will be in there. You can take a look at that. As far as amateur radio itself, if you're looking for like transmitting, there's 3 different classes. I am a general class, I'm a 2nd level, but there is technician and also extra. Technician really is limited to like handheld radios, which I guess I'll grab mine. Like these guys, hello microphone. So like these are pretty limited in what they can actually do. They're pretty good in emergency situations. A lot of people, like if they're driving or like mountain climbing or anything like that, they'll buy some of these just because you get higher power out of it than like say a walkie-talkie. And I mean, they're just kind of fun to play with. Yeah, all this is pretty much fun to play with. As far as being a general, I'm allowed to transmit on some of these lower frequencies. The FCC gives a kind of nice chart. I guess this is ARRL, the Amateur Radio League. So like, they kind of give lettering for what you can and can't do. So like A is for advanced, which kind of no longer exists. So really, the only ones that matter is E, G, and T. So you got general, which is mine, technician, which is the very basic level. You can get that license easy peasy. $15, like an hour of studying, you have the license. And that opens you up to transmitting on, let's see, 50 megahertz, 144, 222, 420, AE, everything. Except for some of the lower stuff. As a general, I'm allowed to use some of the bigger transmitters that are actually able to put out like 1,500 watts of power and transmit overseas. I don't own any of those because I'm a poor college student. But there is some other cool stuff that you can get into. This is one thing, software-defined radios have been kind of coming in the market fairly recently, last 5 years or so. You can pick up one of these guys, which I have right here. Says $32. USB software-defined radio. There's some programs for it like Cubic SDR, and we'll show that off real quick. Doesn't take much time. Boop. Hello? Oh. We're not gonna play nice today. Oh, there we go. Maybe now? Yes. Very good. Very good. So we can go down to like 100 megahertz where you'll start seeing stuff that's kind of familiar. Switch this to FM. Goodness. So this is where FM radio should be, but apparently we've got too much concrete around us that a lot of it's getting blocked. But like I said earlier, 100.3, they've got enough power behind them that I guess you can actually kind of receive them a little bit. I'm trying to get the audio, but this is called Cubic SDR. That's true. We'll try that. Speakers. Pulse audio is a bit broken for me. But anyways, I mean, just take my word, you can like go up to the top left corner, you can select like FM, FM and stereo. So, you know, left and right channel, AM, lower sideband, upper sideband, a lot of that's for digital receiving. And you can do this all here with just, you know, a nice cool waveform. And actually, what is this guy at? They don't put their stuff on there. Okay, we'll go to like 500 megahertz and see if we can find this guy. I think if it's the older style, it's going to be around 530 or 540. Boop, 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 boop. No, maybe. Maybe not. Oh, here we go. Okay, there's some noise here. So this might even be like some of these little blips here. That's either my microphone or it could be any one of the microphones in this building pretty much. They just give off a ton of noise. They're horribly filtered. So you're able to just kind of receive them on a little bit of every frequency nearby. This is using something called narrowband FM. And you're able to just tune right in on some of that. If you really want, a project idea I've had for a while is to just take one of these things, put a Raspberry Pi in like a cabinet in one of these buildings or so, and just power it on, leave it there for a while, and just record lectures. So I never have to go to class. Like, why not? I mean, no one's gonna stop you. Kind of cool, $30. You can get a lot done with them. There's some other cool stuff like GNU radio. That if you're doing a lot more with transmitting, it's fairly useful. It's kind of like a click and drag program built in Python. You just kind of like, I want to take this frequency and decode it with FM and save that in a file. Cool. You just click and drag boxes together and it goes. That's a lot more useful if you're messing around with anything like the HackRF, which this is where stuff gets pricey. If you want to do transmitting, you're talking like, you know, 320, I guess, for that. There's some enterprise stuff. There's a better version of this called the Blade RF, which costs some amount, a lot more, if I can find one. I guess that one's running about 820. Anyways, pricey. Pricey if you want to transmit with software-defined radio. Cheap if you just want to receive. You can get these USB dongles cheap. There's some other stuff like APRS, Automatic Packet Reporting System. So this guy actually has support for it. I can go program in here some GPS data, latitude and longitude, and go and transmit that. There are 2 people in town who have online receivers for it that then will take that and either retransmit it over the air, or they'll get uploaded to databases. One of those cool databases is aprs.fi. It just kind of scrapes that database and throws it onto a map. So here we got AIMS. Boop, boop, boop. So right here's Duff. This guy over here is a tower set up for just receiving literally everything on 144.39 megahertz. And if it's formatted correctly, it gets shot up to the internet. So if I extend this to like 24 hours, I hopefully can see some cool stuff like vehicles as well. So like this guy's just driving around with his car and he's just transmitting his location probably from his phone or something. And just every time that gets transmitted, one of these towers picks it up and uploads it online. Yeah, another guy over here, I've seen him around a bunch. He likes to take a nice little path, like basically right through campus. Where are we at? Ellis Teca. Okay. Yep. There we go. There's campus. Yep. There we go. Lead. I don't know why people do this, to be honest, but it's cool. And there's like a decent amount of people transmitting. Hello. Can I get actual data here? Chicago. What do we got going on here? Oh boy. Yeah, so Ames is a bit quiet, but like this is a worldwide thing. Like you can go over to Europe and look at what they're up to. It's a bit ridiculous. I will say it's a lot of old people. Radios in general are kind of like something that I'd say is stuck around with like the Vietnam War. A lot of those people got licenses around then and have kept them. Otherwise, it's really like an electrical engineering, computer engineering hobby. I've met way too many people who have their license. A lot of people at Rockwell Collins Aerospace, whatever you want to call them now, they've got a lot of this kind of stuff set up. Cedar Rapids has a lot of fun little groups. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna close out that tab. Anyways, kind of cool stuff. APRS, just kind of public. There's some cool stuff the university does. If anyone knows M2I, the balloon team usually puts an APRS transmitter on their balloon. And so when they send up a weather balloon, that thing's just gonna get carried by whatever wind is up, 10,000 feet up. So they just transmit straight down their GPS location and they'll just track that thing on same kind of map there, figure out where its last location was. Probably means it crashed in a field at that point, and it's probably within like a half-mile radius of wherever it landed. So, kind of cool. There's some just nifty hardware hacking things that people have done. If any of you have heard of Open Sesame, basically garage doors are bad. Most of them. Some of them are good, but most of them are bad, and you can pretty much just repeat the same set of you just brute force it with every single key combo, and you can do it in about 7 seconds, I think. And someone a while back figured out that these little messaging whatever you want to call them, pink little things, apparently they have a chip in them that they're meant to operate on one frequency and just communicate between each other. But they put a pretty nice chip in them so they can actually act a little bit like a software-defined radio. And you can open them up anywhere from like 300 megahertz to a gigahertz. So someone figured out, well, garage doors operate on about those 5 frequencies. And they just set up one of these things, a little portable garage door opener for every garage door in the world. So that's kind of fun. Another reason to get in radios. A lot of physical security. This stuff also kind of applies to old 90s cars before rolling codes became a thing. You can just pretty much tune it to the same frequency, same thing, unlock any car. Just some other quick referencing things. Repeater Book, great website if you're looking for the old people. I don't care. So we'll go to Iowa here and just kind of showcase what this actually is. And Story County. Boop, boop, boop. So we got a few repeaters in the area. So with these handheld radios, all those frequencies I can hit with here, minus I think that first one. I'm not sure what that is, but all these others, these are all amateur radio frequencies. If you have your technician license, you can transmit out to any of these. And what they do is when they receive something with a specific tone, in this case, like the ones here names have 114 hertz tone, so your radio just has that programmed in. You just set it. If it hears that tone along with your transmission, it'll open up, take your transmission in, and then retransmit it. So the nice thing with that, since these things are usually only about 5 watts of power or so, these repeaters usually are putting out 50 watts or so, if not more. The ones here in Ames usually can cover Ames and then maybe even get as far as like Nevada. Usually not Des Moines or anything like that. But just kind of cool. This is a good thing to keep in mind if you're looking to get a radio for just emergency purposes. Because wherever you're going, like if you're going to be climbing an area or hiking a trail or something out in the middle of nowhere, you can just look up some of these. Sometimes you can transmit to them. So where your cell phone probably won't work, you usually can hit one of these repeaters and hopefully someone's listening on it, and it expands your radius from maybe like a mile with a handheld radio to 50 miles or more when you actually hit one of these. Radio Reference, another cool website. Gives you some just neat database stuff. Like once again, we can go to Story County and we can see some of the frequencies that are being used here. So like here we got the frequency for fire dispatch. Just go listen to it. I mean, it's not encrypted or anything. Yep. Any of those like internet emergency service scanners, a lot of the time it's just someone setting up with like one of these guys and uploading the that feed straight to like a live stream of some kind on the internet. And like you can get most things here. You got the sheriff's portable radios, courthouse maintenance, jail, EMS. What else we got? More fire dispatch. Is this the airport? This is the airport. The airport operates on AM, and you can actually pick up some of their weather, and then I believe also one of these frequencies is for aircraft itself. It's not what the aircraft are usually communicating over. Sometimes they will, but usually more these frequencies are used for like just giving some general info out to the aircraft about just whatever. Some of it can be even digital, so the instruments in the plane will receive that. ISUs has a ton of stuff like horticulture, maintenance, whatever. Just go listen to those. Pick up one of these guys, it'll transmit, or it'll receive any of those frequencies. You'll probably have to wait a while for someone to actually transmit on them, because they're not frequently used. But it also, down here, we got a list of trunking radios that are used in Story County. So we've got like some companies. Iowa State University has one. She uses a Motorola. I believe that's unencrypted. However, they also use Project 25, which stuff is now pushing towards that. That's a, by default, not encrypted transmission, but can be. And that's what the police and everyone else is trying to move to. For the moment, though, while it's not encrypted, you can just take a couple of these again, literally 2 of them. Each one of these has like 1 or 2 channels that are used for control. In this case, this guy's got 2. The C after him stands for control. Basically, on those frequencies, the radio, the repeater there, transmits out who's going to be talking on what station. That way, when you have your little handheld radio, it can go and hop between these other 3 frequencies and figure out, like, all right, I'm maintenance. Someone else on maintenance is talking to me, but someone from like horticulture is over there talking on something. So frequency 1's for horticulture. Let's use frequency 2 for our maintenance stuff. And if you just use a couple of these, you can get some trunking radio software and just start receiving on any of that. Kind of fun. Been meaning to set up one of those just in my apartment to, listen to all that for fun. As far as some really cheap hardware, if you're wanting to get a handheld radio, this is the meme one to get. I'm sure some of you have seen this. It's a Baofeng UV5R. They're about 25, 30 bucks. I mean, they even sell these things in like 2 packs, 5 packs. They're dirt cheap. Chinese made radio, terrible filters, not great. Would not recommend for like anything other than like a first radio to mess around with. Not very professional. I'm pretty sure they violate FCC laws technically, but I mean, they do work. I have used these for a while. You can listen to anyone on the repeaters here, transmit to them. No one's got really any big complaints with them. Dirt cheap, lasts like a week on a battery. Pretty great. And with that, get your license, because then you can actually like transmit with that. Otherwise, you'd be technically illegal transmitting with one of those. So here in Ames, upcoming on the 4th, we've got one on campus here. Boop, boop. So this is probably one in Howe. Boone occasionally has a few. Yeah, I guess since it's towards the end of the semester, this is the last one for on campus. Otherwise, there's places in Des Moines, there's places in Boone, just wherever. Wherever there's kind of an amateur radio club, you can usually find someone who's willing to host the exam. The exams, since it is kind of a weird government thing, it costs $15 to take it. It takes like maybe 20 minutes of your time, and it takes like an hour of studying to pass the exam. You only need like an 80% on it or something like that, and all the questions are online. Ooh, goodness. Let's see if I can find them real quick. There we go, practice exams. That was easy. And question pool. Boop, boop, boop. Here you go. Here's all the questions. Since it's a government exam, all the questions are online. All the answers are online too. I'm pretty sure I might have an issue here because I blocked JavaScript on stuff, but here we go. No? Sure. I don't know. Oh, okay. Now it's showing answers for some of them. But, what color is ground, basically? Or, green, what is that? It's ground. And some other stuff like that. There's some questions about, like, should you put a ladder next to power lines? Other things like that. Pretty general. If you can read most of these and have any lick of common sense, you'll get your exam passed pretty easily. I didn't even know how to use a radio when I passed the exam. So, yep, that's all I got really. If you got any other questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm also in Slack. So yeah, that's it. And with that, have a good evening.